So, hopefully I haven't forgotten too much of what I wanted to say, and I may bounce around a little. But I did say it might sound like ego and me, and I, but I'm just telling you my story to get to, we all have a story inside of us. The main point of making this series of films is we all have to make decisions. We all have to commit. We have to commit to liking things we don't like at times. We have to commit to working in places we don't like to work. Even training, you'll sometimes end up training with people that you wouldn't want to train with a second time. After meeting Saito Sensei in New Zealand, I built my first dojo. I decided that after spending, I don't know if it was a week or 4 days, it was, felt like eternity, and it was wonderful. He told me to buy as much film as I could. I had a cine camera myself, and all photographs were banned of any kind, and all filming was banned at any time. He said he'd just retired from the railway. This was his first seminar. He was really pleased with such a large attendance. Well, if 60p was a large attendance for an 8th Dan, but those were the days, He was a very humble student of O-Sensei, and all he wanted to do was keep O-Sensei's Aikido pure. He developed the anti-kata of the 31, and O-Sensei asked him to put the anti-kata to O-Sensei's 31 kata. So he said, I can't change the kata or anything that O-Sensei taught me, but I can add and develop my own weapons. But I will not change anything that O-Sensei gave us. And he decided that he wasn't going to be a spiritual teacher in any form for his students to follow. He was going to set his life to teaching O-Sensei's basic Aikido techniques. And he said he couldn't remember them all, but the ones he could, and to believe me, what was hundreds and hundreds, that was his quest in life. So I went back home, I built a dojo, and he said to me, buy a gi, have a Ken and Joe, put mirrors on the wall, and I think later on he advised to get the Takemusu as well, but that wasn't at that particular time. And that was in, I believe, February 1982. After a few, and then the student that I met in New Zealand was he had definitely a year, if not longer, in Iwama, as Uchideshi. He'd got his first Dan. He was a massive guy, very nice. And Saito Sensei said, before you go back to Switzerland, I want you to divert to England and teach Tony. So that was another reason why I wanted to get a dojo ready. And I had the premises, this large garage and a showroom, and above it there was a spare area, and I converted it into a permanent dojo. He came, he taught me, and I learned a great deal from him, Andre, and I went on to Switzerland to meet him, and it was the start of another journey. The body, you may know this, I don't know, like I said earlier in the film, there was 3 of us doing the 31 kata, and even though we were all doing the same positions, we all looked different in the way we showed it through our bodies. So after 6 months, I was finding that my body was like a car running out of fuel. I started to doubt if my memory of what he taught me was in my head, or really did he teach me it. So I would go on to, I don't know how I found out now, to be honest, but I would find out where he was somewhere in the world. And every 6 months after that first meeting, I would travel somewhere in the world. I didn't go back to New Zealand, but I went to America several times, and I met some really nice people in the Oakland dojo. And again, I won't mention names, but there used to be around about 60 people on the mat every night in this dojo. And it was an amazing teacher. Sadly, he didn't turn out so good in the end for the public, but we won't go into that now. But the attendance was excellent, and I met many, many of the top teachers that are in America today. We became friends because I'd go back every summer to the summer camp, and because Saito Sensei would go there regular. So that was one of the planned 6 months. And the other one, when I was running out of fuel again, I would find another place for him to go. Could be Germany, Italy. I remember one particular one where I went to the USA, and some new people invited him in New Jersey. And he was doing book signing. I didn't have one of his books with me at the time. I had the book of 5 Rings, one of the few books that I've ever read. This was in 1983, so it was a year on from when I first met him. And he was doing the book signing, and he was signing the books with a pen, stamping them. And then he hadn't made any, he was sitting in this very small little closet, signing away his books. And when he saw my face, he put the pen to one side, he got out his calligraphy. I mean, I'll call it a pen, but obviously it's a brush. He got out a pen. I only had this book, so I handed him this book. He put his signature, the date, and his stamp in the book, gave it back to me. The next person in line was buzzing to think that he was going to get something special, since he put his calligraphy set away, got out his pen and carried on signing. So I'd like to just bounce about a bit here with my thoughts. In New Zealand, I went there and I was welcomed. I'd come from the other side of the world. Saito Sensei took me everywhere he went, told me as much as he could about Aikido and No-Sensei. But I was, a very small Ford Escort. I was invited to be with him all the time. There was the driver, who was Keith Hartley, who had invited Saito Sensei, who I became friends with as well. And he was a Yorkshireman that moved to New Zealand, sadly passed away by now. And I liked him a lot. And Saito Sensei, so Keith was the driver, Saito Sensei was in the passenger seat, Andre was in the back, and I was next to him. And Saito Sensei said, as I told you, that I must be there every time, wherever he goes, so all the sightseeing and all the things that we done together. And when I look back on it, I mean, what an honour, what an experience. And you know, I was a bit gullible because to me, it just seemed so easy. It was as if, you know, you went on holiday with your best friend. It was just nothing demanding of me, nothing, you know, just he seemed to be at ease with me straight away, and you know, he was happy to talk, and it was as if me and the Deshi was of an equal friendship. But I noticed the people starting to not like me on the course. They didn't like it because I was allowed my cine camera. And Sensei's saying, buy as much film as you can afford, Tony, and you be there in front of me and you just keep filming me. Well, the people who were hosting it weren't even allowed to take a snapshot unless he said that they could take photos. That was mainly in the evenings for special presentations. So I started getting people disliking me through no fault of my own. New Jersey, him signing my book, and the only person to have one signed with a string of people in the line with his calligraphy set. And I know it is me again, but I'm just trying to paint the picture of my experience with Saito Sensei. You grow better roses than me, he said when he stayed at my house in the village of Orwell. He came with Stan Pranin, his Uchi Deshi at the time, and we're standing in the garden and he's saying, go and get pen and paper, Tony, I want to draw how the Japanese family designs their garden on their family. This made me realise that there's more to this master than Aikido. And of course, us Aikido-yokas, all we think about is Aikido, Aikido, Aikido. But, you know, here's a man who's got a life. And here's a man talking on this camera who's got a life. 2 children, a mortgage, a business that had grown. And he came and stayed with me in 1989, June 89 it was. So the years had been rolling by. I'd been seeing him twice a year, every year, somewhere in the world. Germany, Italy, Switzerland, America, you know, it just went on and on. In the UK, Scotland, Hillingdon, University came to. For 19 years, I saw him twice a year somewhere in the world. It wouldn't matter where it was. He gave me my first, second and third Dan Aikikai because he said, well, you should have it because I'm Aikikai. He didn't like the style and the Hombu Dojo, but the Aikikai is something separate that was organised. It's an office within the Hombu building in Tokyo, and the office is the Aikikai. So it's a bit like, let's say somebody rents an office out of a tall building. Well, the building's got different floors in it, and there's Aikido being trained, and they're training in the style of the Hombu Dojo. It's a flowing style, and some very good quality teachers there, and a very nice style to watch and also train. And I've trained in this style as other styles, and I still personally prefer Iwama Ryu. Only because it seems to work, it's effective, it works. One of my students, a third Dan, said, you can't teach your students all the time for that one time that they might be attacked in the streets. I mean, why would they spend year after year for that one time? Are they paranoid that they're going to be attacked? There's got to be more to it than that. And I had to agree with them. I do it because I enjoy it. It gives me a buzz. But I can't do something that doesn't work, or else that wouldn't be me. It would be like false. So let's say, yes, I'm doing this technique. It works because my master has not only said so, but he's told me that it comes from O-Sensei. I've used it in different countries. I remember going first to Russia in, I believe, 1994. All these strong Russians, big, some strong, some scars, bent noses, tattoos, all sorts. They would test you. You would have to have your best form, and it's never let me down. So my Aikido, from my master teaching me, works. So once that part's out the way, you can just enjoy your art, can't you? You can enjoy the cardiovascular work that you do. You can enjoy the pain, the endurance of being able to go through the pain. When you're in Sawari-waza and you think that it feels like your knees are bleeding, you think to yourself, if I give up now, then I will look bad and that will hurt my ego. So you keep going a little bit longer, and the pain is getting so great that the technique becomes the last thing on your mind. You're doing the technique because the teacher's watching you, but all you're worried about is the pain in your knees and worried about the amount of blood that will be coming out and how you haven't got any bandages to stop the blood. So it ends up with poor little me is more important than the Aikido. So if you train long enough, you're going to go through the fun, the pleasure, the joy. You're also going to go through the pain. You're going to go through some really painful, hurtful times. I remember being in America. I was going there for 2 weeks. The sensei thought that I went there to test him being a big, strong person. I didn't know that's what he thought. So he done the most powerful Niki on me on the first day. I couldn't feel this little finger and this part of the hand, all this part of the hand, I couldn't feel for the next 2 weeks. It was numb. It killed it. We went to a party one night and I had to confront him, even though you don't talk to the sensei unless they talk to you. This is how strict it was in those days. You had to know your place. There am I, running a multi-million-pound business back home, bringing up a family with all the concerns that brings, running your children to parties and all the things that see their friends, all the things you have to do 24/7, run a business, employ staff who have got all sorts of problems, because I believe I was up to about 5 staff then. Might not sound much, but you get, that's 5 problems adding to your own personal problems. A mortgage, I'd moved house to a couple of times I think then, couldn't buy a house, so I had to rent one because I'd taken on the large garage. So it's not poor little me, it was what I chose to do, it's what I wanted. But I'm giving you the picture that I was fanatical about Aikido. 50 years on, I'm still that fanatic. I've done all sorts of things that if you've listened to my other films, you'll know. But I'm still here, and it's because I gave my word to Saito Sensei that I would continue his work throughout Europe and try and show the best Aikido I could show. At times I get people querying my Aikido and they say, why are you doing that? I didn't see Saito Sensei doing it. So because I've got so many books, I've got these old cine films still, I can look back. Sometimes it'll take me a day or two to find the exact picture, the exact point that they're questioning. I'm going to, as they say, touch wood. I always can prove what I'm doing is what Saito Sensei taught me at some period in those 20 years, 19, 20 years, you know. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And when I'm teaching, sometimes I make a mistake. Saito Sensei said he saw Sensei make loads of mistakes over his 24 years. He said he often makes mistakes, but that's because we're human and we might just get it wrong a few times. It doesn't happen so often, thankfully, nowadays, but we get it wrong. But if we get it wrong, own up and say that's wrong. If you show something that's incorrect, research it. If you're wrong and it has been created in your head, tell the students, sorry, I must have made that one up. It must have felt good, but I've researched it. I can't find my version anywhere. It must be wrong. That's my advice to you as a teacher or student, because even being a student, you will be teaching others around you who want to have more knowledge. Thank you for your time. I will continue this journey with you shortly.